Welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratore. A few years ago, state legislators voted to provide city and towns with a local meals option tax of 0.75%. The town of Plymouth adopted it, and today we are joined by Town Manager Melissa Arrighi and Chairman of the Plymouth Board of Selectmen, Ken Tavares, to talk about what Plymouth decided to do with that extra revenue. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate that. So today we're going to talk, as I said in the opening, we're going to talk about the 1820 Courthouse and how we got there. But before we do, we always try to get a little bit of background from our guests. I know you've both been here before, but this is, remember, this is not just being shown in Plymouth, it's shown outside of Plymouth and Pembroke and Duxbury and Kingston as well. So
you're saying those towns don't know who we are?
They don't know who you are. They don't know. So just real quickly, who is Melissa Arrighi?
I'm the town manager here in Plymouth. I've been working for the town since late 2004. I started when Mark Sylvia was town manager.
I was going to say, it's more than 12 years now, isn't it?
It's a long time.
Oh my God, wow.
I've been town manager since 2012, and I served as acting town manager for a couple of short stints in between town managers. And then prior to that, I worked in the town of Orleans as the assistant town administrator. And before that, I was in higher education for 13 years in human resources.
At Bridgewater?
At Bridgewater State University.
That's great. Well, we're glad to have you in Plymouth.
Thanks.
And Ken, for the people that don't know you out there, who is Ken Tavares?
I'm chairman of the Board of Selectmen currently. I've been involved in town government on and off since 1971. I've been a town meeting member.
Was I born then? I don't know if I was. Were you born then? I don't know.
I like to say no.
Yeah, but we all know better. But I've been on the Advisory and Finance Committee and served on the Board.
Oh, I didn't realize you were on the Advisory and Finance Committee.
Oh, yes, that's how I started.
Oh, really?
Had a very tough interview with Reuben Winokur, the town moderator at the time. And
wow.
I'd just gotten out of the service and wanted to get involved in the town, and I evidently passed his test.
Yeah, good for you. And, thank you for your service for our country, but also for the town of Plymouth, too. I mean, it's remarkable to have somebody that's been involved with the community, particularly growing community like this, for all those years. You deserve a lot of credit.
Well, really thank you, but it's been fun. The community's been good to me, and I was always taught as a youngster that if you drew from the well, you had to put back at some point. Right. So I've had that opportunity and appreciate it.
That's terrific. And what did you do for work when you worked?
I was a banker.
In a real job?
My real job, the one that paid the bills. I was a banker locally in the area for a good many years.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So in the opening, I talked about the 0.75 meal tax that several years ago the state legislators actually passed. Can you talk about that, how that actually came, really how it actually works, and what happened in Plymouth to actually get that option?
One of the wonderful things I think that the state has done for local communities is provide local options. They create the ability for municipalities, different towns, to adopt things that would work for them and apply that money directly. So for the town of Plymouth, we adopted a local option meals tax made possible by the state. And what this did was it added an additional 0.75% to the 6.25% tax. And that 0.75% would go directly to the town if you adopted it. Now, Plymouth didn't adopt it right away. We wanted them to. There was some resistance to that change. So
I wonder who was resisting.
We missed out on a couple $1 million, but we have it in place now.
So is it about $1 million a year?
It's a little over. It's doing fantastic.
Is it? Yeah.
So every time you eat out, thank you, because you're helping to contribute towards that. So it's bringing in a little over $1 million a year. It doesn't seem to have negatively, I don't mean doesn't seem, it has not negatively impact any of the restaurants. So that's worked out well. And what Plymouth did is they adopted, they petitioned a special act through the state to apply that funding directly towards the funding of the new town hall.
So the town couldn't have done it directly to the new town hall. They had to get the special act through the state to do that.
We did. We passed it at town
Otherwise, you
meeting.
could have just kept the money.
It would have just gone into the general
Okay.
fund, and we could have used it that way. But it seemed to make sense to directly target it towards a purpose. And at the time, nobody really knew what to do with this structure, the 1820 building and the dilapidated county structure that was behind it, the commissioner's building. And it just seemed like such a perfect fit when the chairman and I spoke about it to take a structure, a gorgeous historical structure in the heart of the downtown, and see if people were interested in making it town hall. And nothing helps a cause better than to have a funding source. So that was, I think people were pleased with that.
Yeah, we'll get into the process in a minute, but I want to talk about the history of the 1820 courthouse. Ken, can you talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Well, as its name implies, it was opened in 1820. The town or the county moved from the 1749 courthouse, which is in Town Square, over to this brand new building that Daniel Webster gave the opening address to celebrate the opening of the courtroom. It has been used, and until the county put the building up for sale, was used continuously as the court for the county. And it's a magnificent building. Unfortunately, in its latter years, it was starting to deteriorate, and it was actually getting ahead of the county, and repairs needed to be made. And then
the new one was built on
the new one was built,
yeah.
and they decided that it was time to sell the building.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we started the process of this, it wasn't an easy process, was it, to get to this point?
It's one of those things you look back at it and
Yeah.
you think it was a wonderful experience while you were going through it. It was certainly trying. I think some of the community was divided, and what we did was, I think, one of the textbook cases of when you are able to start with a grassroots campaign and you go home to home. I mean, I remember being in people's homes on Sundays doing a presentation while they had a coffee and they had the neighbors in. We had some key community members in the town that were very committed to it. I think of Enzo Monti and Cookie Zinaboni, and some people that had served. The committees all seemed to be on board. We had an absolutely historic meeting
That's what I remember.
that you were part of,
Yeah.
where we had, in one meeting room, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, the Community Preservation Committee, the Historic District Committee, the School Committee.
I think the Redevelopment Authority, too.
Redevelopment
Yeah,
Authority,
yeah.
all sitting around a table saying, is this something that we're all committed to? Because you needed everybody to be
Yeah.
on board to do it, and it was. People embraced it.
Well, and the process.
Except for the parking.
Yeah, right.
The process in the end actually made it successful. It was difficult. There were many, many different ideas as to what should be done with the building. As you remember, you were on the Board of Selectmen, and there wasn't consensus. Right. And it finally wound up in frustration. And people were just saying, there's nothing we can do with it. We just need to sell it. And I think that's what I remember the most of being at that meeting that you chaired as the chairman, and said, we have to decide what we're going to do with the building. And we have a week to make that decision. And the next morning, I remember Melissa and I were in your office and saying, listen, maybe that should be the town hall, and we can put this together. And that's when it started to roll. I think having gone through the planning process with all of these other groups actually helped us to convince the town that this should be the new town hall.
And I think they all felt some buy-in to it, and they had some input to it. I think that also helped. And I think the idea of the meals tax, which, why the show is State Matters, put that meals tax in place, really helped to target that. I think that really brought it over the edge. So it wasn't coming out of the property tax, it was coming out of the meals tax, which are visitors that come to the community or people that do eat.
And it still surprises people today. Over the last few months, I've spent quite a bit of time, as Melissa has, in the public areas of the building. And when you take people through and tell them this is being paid for by the meals tax and not on the tax rate, it's a surprise to them, and it meets with great approval.
Yeah, right. So let's look at some video that the folks at PAC TV took several weeks ago of the new town hall. Let's kind of talk about. So this is the what do you call this? The glass area, the glass room.
This is the glass lobby.
Yeah, that's a great meeting area.
It's a great space. It's bright. It's a nice place to greet people. I actually try and work out of there a couple hours a week. I bring my laptop down, and I've met some wonderful residents that way and been able to bring them around the building. The employees also often have lunch in that area, so we set it up with the tables.
I'll go in there too, and you made the suggestion early on. If you want to meet somebody, just go in that glass area. I mean, you can get a room if you want, but just go meet in that area. It's a great meeting place.
And you see a lot of people, so you actually run into other employees. You have questions.
It's beautiful. And for folks who haven't seen it, I mean, just look how beautiful this is.
So I love this area, the collections area. We changed it from the treasurer collector's office to the collections. It really does look like a bank as you go in there. That foyer area right outside the Great Hall is also, I think, a very welcoming, particularly with the stained glass. And this is all restored from the, not the Registry of Deeds, it was from one of the courtrooms, and those two pieces
probate
flanking
court.
it, the probate court, these two pieces flanking it were custom made. The Community Preservation Committee was absolutely instrumental in paying for that. We say the building was paid by meals tax, not completely a fair statement, because of course some money for the restoration of the 1820
Oh, yeah, talk
came
about
from.
that, yeah.
So the restoration of the 1820 courthouse, we tried to separate all of these bills. Just to interrupt, this
Yeah.
is such a great state-of-the-art area for PAC TV.
Yeah.
So much different than the closet we put them in at the
Yes.
old town hall.
And it really was a closet.
We tried to put, it really was. We tried to put those display cases around every meeting room, and you are going to see them sit empty for a long time. What we wanted to do is not just fill them with things, but provide for growth in the future. So as you establish more sister cities, accept gifts from other locations, you can have cabinets dedicated to that.
Well, I think also that there's been a commitment that the building needs to tell the story of Plymouth, and that's happening now. It's the place where the government sits, where we conduct our business, but it's also telling the story, and the 1820 is the perfect place to begin that story.
Now, is this where the selectmen are meeting now?
Nothing
Yeah,
could have
not
made me
yet.
more pleased when we decided, or actually the chairman decided that the selectmen would actually meet in the courtroom. It does need to be used, but at the same time, what we do in there needs to be respectful. I know there were some people that were interested in possibly having just weddings in there, but I think that this was intended to be a serious government space, and at least for right now, we're going to keep it along those lines. Just the selectmen will meet in there, with the exception of course, if we had a state event or bringing in senators or representatives, we could do something in this room.
And the area has been designated now so that elected officials have one area to sit in, staff another, the press, the public. It's working out well and has exceeded everyone's expectations.
Including PAC TVs. They had to do a ton of work, and we were only going to have one initial meeting in there until we had the room all set up, and we all loved it so much. We said to them, no, we're going to meet in there every week now.
Yeah, they love that, by the way.
They're doing a good job, though. It's,
Yeah.
We're getting compliments
No,
on the room.
I thought when I went there, I thought that was a better room for the selectmen to meet
Yeah.
than the other room. It just seemed more quaint. Yeah, it's beautiful. Talk a little bit more, let's go to I think the Great Hall. I just want to see the Great Hall, guys, if you can put that one up next. Is there a reason for the names? You started talking about the history, Ken, or it talks about Plymouth. Is there a reason for these names? How'd the names get developed?
So we worked with the architects on the name, so you have rooms like the Cranberry Room and the Ropewalk Room, Great Hall, obviously the 1820 courtroom. We really wanted to keep with neutral names. Now, the thought behind that, as I was working with the architects with a small internal team, we didn't bring that to the building committee, is that there may be a time in the future where future generations may want to dedicate rooms to different names, but I felt
Okay,
to
so you made
open.
them general somewhat.
I really did. I mean, even they had gone so, they had done a pilgrim room, and even with that, I said, I don't think so. I think that we leave the categories very broad, and I thought when you looked at the high ceilings and we saw the drawings of this particular room, I thought the Great Hall really made sense. Just like the boardroom that we have up on the 4th floor, it's just the glass boardroom that's in the town manager's offices. Someday people might change their minds and want to do something different, so why put a name in place that would
Like
be
name
hard
it
to
the
change?
Tavares Room or something like that.
Well, the Great Hall can accommodate our largest committees, and I think that's
I was
important.
going to say, what do you use this for?
The Finance Committee
Committee,
is
yeah,
using it.
yeah.
Last night, the Committee of Precinct Chairs had a meeting
Okay.
in there. The electronics are first class. You can hear well, you can see for presentations, the screens drop down. It actually makes it a much better environment for holding meetings and getting information across, as well as every other room. During the day, if you walk through Town Hall, you will see people meeting in a number of the smaller rooms, so it's being used and used well.
Let's go to the collection room next. And you started to talk about the collection room. It's not really the treasurer.
Collectors anymore, it's
Correct.
collections.
Collections, yeah.
And you come in over there to the right. They set it up just like a bank. I think that there are 5 separate windows that
Yeah,
they
it is
can
like a
service
bank.
staff.
Although it's funny now, when you start going to banks now, they're getting rid of all those glass structures now. They're making it more customer service oriented now. If
Well,
you
they're
go to the
serving
bank.
coffee, we're not.
Yeah, right.
But also there's privacy. I
Yeah.
think when people are there, especially in the collections area, you don't want everyone listening to your business, and it gives that distance between the customer, the citizen, and people that are behind them.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Ropewalk Room. And I think that's an interesting name, but that had to come from something.
What the architects did when they first gave us a list of the names, the Mill Room, the Rope Walk, the Plantation, the Cranberry Room, they just tried to, the Shallop Room, I didn't know what Shallop was. I didn't
Yeah,
know
we'll
that
get
was
to that in a
certain kind of
minute,
room. So they really just tried to find things as they looked through our history in the different parts of town that would fit. And then we as internal staff just went through the list and thought what we...
But what does Ropewalk really mean? Anything?
This really goes back to the Cottage Company. There was a rope walk building in the Cottage, which is now down at Mystic. So it was just appropriate to bring in that part of Plymouth history, since the Cottage Company it was a big part of our economic life for over 100 years.
Now, how many does this seat?
So we've changed that. I like looking at that rope walk room picture, because what we did is we've actually changed the furniture around. So that's the new way. So we, when you originally went into this room, all the tables are centered in all the rooms.
Yep.
But we felt it was important, this room was so large, to have an audience. So see where you see those chairs along the back? Now when you walk in, you have all the old benches that were restored by the Community Preservation Committee. We have 3 in there, so that seats about 30 to 35, which is a nice sized room for Zoning Board of Appeals, unless it's a more controversial meeting. But it's nice for the Historic District
So they'll
Commission.
sit around this table, a table like this.
The members can sit along one side, then there's all benches lined up here now, 3 benches, and we have extra chairs that they can pull back if they want to. I always thought it was nice when they bring the people presenting right up to the table with them, so the chairman can decide what option he wants to use.
So who uses that, other than the zoning, you said?
Zoning Board of Appeals was in there on Tuesday night. I saw, I believe Community Preservation uses that room, or the room right downstairs from it, the Mill Room. I've seen the Historic District Commission in there. Not Advisory and Finance, they typically use the
Great Hall.
The Great Hall.
Yeah, okay. And the Shallop Room you brought up, I thought that was an interesting name. I have no idea what it means either, but.
I had to look it up.
We're going to have to get you back to your history. The Shallop was the boat that came aboard the Mayflower. It was in sections, and this is what was put together, and they at P-Town, and they explored along the coast on the way up to Plymouth. And you can see the Shallop when the Mayflower is here. She's tied up alongside. So again, another very important part of our history.
Now,
You can see that on each of the doors, too, to these rooms. They tried to do a glass mural, made it see-through, but a glass mural that would match the name of the room.
Now, what is this room used for? Is this mostly a conference room?
That's a conference room. That room also you can film live from there, or just have it taped. This Shallop Room is used, I have the department head meetings there on Monday. It's used a lot during the day by staff. We have interdepartmental meetings where we try and bring in planning and building and conservation, all our engineers, to talk about any new developments in town. DPW, so we all have an opportunity to say, what do we think it's going to do for traffic? What do we need for road work there? So we have those meetings there, because it's a nice size.
It's a good size table.
It fits
too.
quite a few. I think that we can have 25 or 20 in there really easily. So we meet in there quite a bit as staff, and I've seen meetings in there. I saw the No Place for Hate Committee in there one evening, and I've seen it used at night by Conservation Commission.
Nice. Yeah, it's a nice room. Now, I know when it comes around, this casing here, what's all in this glass casing here?
The one you see on your left is Plymouth, England, and it's all the gifts they've
That's all
given
from
to
Plymouth,
us.
England?
And the one on the right-hand side, as you come down that corridor from the glass lobby.
Oh, there's another one, too.
There is, and that one's
Okay.
Shishikama, Japan.
Okay.
And we had them design those cabinets in a way, obviously they lock. But do you remember at 11 Lincoln Street, how crowded everything was getting? We had, the architect did these cases so that they would have a locked area underneath, so you can rotate the gifts. You don't have to display everything at once.
Yeah.
And we have a hardworking committee that has made the commitment to make sure that everything does get rotated, that we display it properly and labeled. So again, we can tell more of the story by just looking in the cases. And no matter when you walk through the hall, if you see people actually looking at and reading about what's in the cases.
In a good inventory.
Yeah.
So even though I know some people have said, why is there nothing on the walls yet? Because everything has to be inventoried. It will be, see how the walls are still all blank, but there's the real. There will be a place for each of the items, but the committee is taking their time, and we told them that that was very important.
Where are the items coming from?
So some
That are
are in
gonna go on the
11 Lincoln
walls.
Street.
Okay.
Some have been donated as
Okay.
gifts. They're all locked away right now, and they'll come out slowly and go up in all the hallways. You'll see if you go to the 3rd floor outside of Lee Hartman's, the planning and development area, there are 2 paintings that were given to us that the selectmen accepted as
Yes.
gifts about 2 years ago from a local woman.
So it goes back to your theme of it really tells a story about Plymouth then.
Yes.
And that's what's going to be on the
E-
walls.
Everything that's going up on the
Yeah.
walls has a Plymouth connection. And as Melissa said, they're being inventoried. I've noticed over the years of going back in and out of Town Hall that some things just aren't where they used to be, and we don't know what's happened. But now there's a very complete inventory,
Yeah.
and it's going to be fun to watch what happens in the next few months. Also, at the same time, we're looking to put a group together that would be probably docents in the 1820 room, so we can start telling the history of that room.
One last video, guys, if you could put up, is the rooftop. This is my favorite part of the place, is the rooftop
It is the
terrace.
Rooftop Terrace.
Look at that view. Now, is there your office over that way somewhere too, Melissa?
Yes, so my office is on this side. That area that you see down in the corner, we want to encourage employees and the members of the public to come out during beautiful days if they want to have lunch there. You can't eat everywhere in the building, but certainly you can have lunch on the rooftop terrace.
So are there going to be little tables and chairs out there?
So it is a little bit of a balancing act. We haven't really thought about that yet, but the
Because they really haven't been
views-
able to use it yet, right? Because you only opened in the fall.
Yeah,
The late
so
fall, yeah.
I remember when we moved in, we had one beautiful day and there were a couple employees out
yeah.
there, but beyond
Nice.
that, it hasn't really been used yet. The views are spectacular, and
unbelievable.
looking at the cupola is amazing. My
And-
office is right there where you
Yeah,
see that
okay.
back door.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to emphasize here, because this was something that did bring about a great deal of discussion, whether it was necessary or not. But a resident of the town can go out there at any time while the town hall is open. It's not closed off to people, and
Anybody can go up there.
anyone can
Oh,
go up
okay.
there and go through there. And as you look out through the entire viewing area up there, it really shows Plymouth at its best. The downtown, the harbor, the hills, it's a magnificent view, and it's open to the
You
public.
can probably see Provincetown on a real clear day.
Probably on a clear day.
Yeah, wow. So the total cost of this was a little over 40 million?
A little under 40
Little under
million. We will
40
be,
million.
of course, we're still paying some final bills, but we'll be turning back some funding, not a lot, but it came in a little under the
Okay.
$40 million.
And for how long of a time period will that be?
I think we borrowed for this over a 25-year
25
period.
year, yeah, okay. And you talk a little bit about CPC, because you talked a little while ago about how CPC was instrumental in this and really involved.
The community preservation took the rest.
Actually, tell people what that is. Some people may not know what that
Community
is.
Preservation Committee, the town of Plymouth adopted the Community Preservation Act. Was it in 2001, 2002? Right
I'm not
around
sure.
there.
Yeah.
And the Community Preservation Act, if you look at your tax bill, there is a small portion that's dedicated completely to community preservation. And that can then be geared under a committee, appointed committee, that can be put towards recreation, open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. Has to be spent on those 4 areas. Plymouth has shown historically, they've really committed, put a lot of resources, a lot of this funding into both historic preservation and open space. Recreation is kind of new to come along to be able to use CPC funds on it, but I think that you'll see that too, and you have seen that also in Plymouth. So their funding, it was about $5 million of community
Oh, is that
preservation
much, huh?
funds that would go towards this.
Out of the 40 million? Or was that on
Yes,
top of that?
no,
That was a part of
out
that?
of the
Okay,
40
okay.
million total. The 1820 needed so much work. Of course, there had been a fire there years and years ago. The damage inside, once you started to open up those walls, were extensive. Of course, we had to get an elevator in there. And the community preservation, I have to tell you, it's entirely them working with the building committee and historic
And
district.
they're all volunteers, which
All
is amazing, the work
volunteers.
they do. And Bill, you got to give a shout out to Bill
And-
Cohane, too, for his
Right, and
leadership.
also the bill had the resources to find people in the community that were experts in coloring and carpeting and what went on. And these people all volunteered their services. They wanted to make it look like what it was in 1820, and they're convinced that when you walk in there now, that's what it was in 1820.
So what are some of the things that they put the money towards?
They were able to
Because it was only
save-
historical reasons they could use
That's
the
right.
money for.
So the flooring in there, the black and white marble flooring that you see, in the glass lobby as you go over the bridge on the second floor. That's all been cleaned and put back. So you had to meticulously remove all that and
So
be able
that
to
was the
replace
original
it.
then?
Original. But most fantastic, and I don't know if you have a clip of this, is the marble staircase.
Yeah, we did, but yeah.
To
it is, yeah.
dismantle that and put that back together. Wow, did they run into so many problems
That's in
doing
the
that.
classroom area,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
just, you can see it a little bit
Yeah,
there. It's
yeah.
magnificent.
And I think we have to
Yeah,
give
there
Bill
it is,
a
right
lot
there.
of, there it is.
Yeah.
We have to give Bill credit for that because at the
Yeah.
last minute, that was saved. And it was taken apart. So again, it gave.
That's amazing.
Yeah, a wonderful
that.
look to the building.
Yeah.
The rugs in the 1820, the second floor, outside of the courtroom, in the courtroom, and in the Ropewalk Room, were all hand-stitched in place. You're seeing them here. Each one is different. Each one is a period rug that you would have seen in the mid to late 1800s. The paint that you see on the wall in the corridor outside the 1820 courtroom, they did extensive research and sampling and looking at what could have been on that wall years and years ago. And all of that work was done. We didn't have time to do that work. Building committee didn't have time to do that work. They were overseeing the construction of the building. All that work was done by Community Preservation Committee.
And under those marble stairs, you just did something recently.
Yes.
Time capsule.
Yes.
The time
Talk
capsule
about
was
that a
a
little bit.
dedication, was that a month ago already?
Yes.
Probably in January sometime, I think.
The
wasn't it?
building
February,
committee helped, but it was really this group that was put together to somewhat decorate and show the history of the town hall that really took it on. Now, they've changed their name a couple times, so I don't want to be disrespectful. It was Visit 1820 initially. It was a committee that was put together to help look at what we had at 11 Lincoln Street, what should come over, what pieces should come to Town Hall, where they should be put. They then changed their name to something that was more suitable to the history that they were looking at, and the Board of Selectmen just voted the change. Do you remember the committee's name now?
I should. My wife was on it,
So
but I.
awful.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
We'll edit this part out, Ken.
Yeah. So
Well, that's great.
they helped.
And
The
they're gonna-
time capsule was a ton of work because it was really reaching out to so many groups, including the schools, of what should be captured in there.
And that's going to be open when?
50 years,
50 years.
not by any of us.
And the young people that were there for the sealing of the capsule were all given a ticket to come back in 50 years for the
Yeah.
opening. And those children
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's terrific. Well, thank you both for what you do for the town, and really for this whole project. This is really a legacy for 2020 for the town in the center of town. So you both should be applauded for what you do. So thank you so much.
And parking.
Yeah, you got
So-
parking. I know we got to wrap up though. But
Oh.
you got parking coming though, right?
We have a parking deck coming,
Okay. How many spaces?
126.
Okay. And it could be used on weekends and nights by people?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect,
Absolutely.
perfect. Well, excellent, excellent. Well,
Is
thank
it
you
already
again.
over?
We're all done. Thank you so much. Thank you so much
We
again.
just got started.
I know. Thanks again. We hope you enjoyed today's show. I want to once again thank all the staff and volunteers for the great work they do at PAC TV. We'll see you next time on State Matters.